Investors look up to outcome of ongoing Monetary Policy Committee meeting for direction. CBN disburses 149.2 billion naira COVID-19 loans to households. And oil falls as European lockdowns downs recovery hopes. This and more will be coming your way shortly. I am Musa Abubakar, your guide. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo announced that the Bank of Industry has secured 300 million naira loan for Nigerian creative industry. The loan is also in partnership with the National Council for Arts and Culture. This was disclosed by Laoli Akande, aide to the Vice President, in a statement issued at the weekend after the Vice President's attendance at the opening of Ogidi Studios in Lagos. The Vice President said the creative sector will receive support from the Central Bank of Nigeria's Creative Industry Funds Initiative, an initiative that gives financial support to the technology and creative sector at single-digit interest rates. The statement added that the Bank of Industry, in collaboration with the National Council for Arts and Culture, has also secured 300 million loan package for the creative sector. The package provides the funds to the sector at single-digit interest rates with a tenure of 4 to 5 years. Osinbajo said that studios like Ogidi will bring world-class video and sound production capacity to Nigeria, citing that stars from around the world have a place in Lagos that is as good as any studio they have ever recorded in the world. In a bid to position Nigeria's market share in the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, the Standard Organization of Nigeria, is moving to enforce standards by preventing export and import of substandard products. To that effect, the Director General Farouk Salim has issued a 3-month ultimatum to steel manufacturers and distributors to remove substandard steel bars from the markets in the country. He gave the ultimatum in Lagos, stressing that failure to comply will result in prosecutions and serious jail term for offenders. Now, the federal government is creating the right physical space for a sustainable economy post-COVID-19. Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning Zainab Ahmed made the disclosure in a submission at the high-level panels at the Conference of African Ministers of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, COM 2021. On post-COVID economy, she pointed out that Nigeria is committed to achieving sustainable growth as contained in the Sustainable Development Goals.
The large financing gap impacts through development of an integrated national financing framework, INFF, with support from the EU and the UN, among other development partners. The INFF is a tool to help countries strengthen planning processes and overcome existing impediments in financing sustainable development at the national level. But even with the progress that has been made so far, our analysis and data modeling using the domesticated ISDN tool estimates that an SDG financing gap of $100 billion exists.
We have joining us via Zoom Professor Kenneth Amechi. He is a chair in Business and Sustainable Development and Director of the Sustainable Business Initiative at the University of Edinburgh Business School. He joins us to discuss matters arising at the ongoing Conference of African Ministers of Finance. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, COVID-19 has exposed gaps in sustaining the economy in Nigeria and Africa as a whole. What do you see as the most critical problem to challenge and how?
For me, the most critical problem at the moment is to convince people that COVID-19 is real, because I see a lot of people or hear people on the continent, and particularly in Nigeria, saying, denying it and also seeing life as normal. So if you look at the global north or Europe or North America, you see a lot of casualties, and even in South America, we tend to see that. But within Nigeria and Africa, there is a bit of a problem there, because people are not seeing the kind of deaths, the numbers, and it might suggest to them that it's not there or it's not as prevalent as it ought to be. Also, people are beginning to suggest that there are also more pressing problems, more pressing issues to address in terms of other diseases like malaria or similar diseases. So in that case, it makes it a bit challenging to convince people that fighting COVID is a priority. So I think for me, that should be a number one priority through advocacy, through enlightenment, to encourage people to appreciate the fact that it is a real problem indeed.
Okay, the ECA is getting finance ministers and other partners to discuss the multilateral system used in battling the pandemic. Can same approach be adopted in fixing the developmental issues on the continent?
The development of Africa is a major problem, and is it's one that requires more careful thinking that has been offered in the last few decades. So the multinational institutions, either the World Bank or IMF, they've come with all sorts, and even the international NGOs. So development is not a one-day journey. So what I would think is we need to go back, and although people don't like to hear it, but the one way to address our developmental issues is to focus on education. Education is very key, and education is a long-term project. To educate a generation, you're looking at about 25 years. But politicians don't like that. Politicians are there for 4 years, and they like something that is much more visible, maybe building schools and so on and so forth. But education in terms of capacity building and developing the mind and building culture, so to speak, I think for me would be a good way to address our development challenges. And on top of that, you also have the issues of governance. So I think governance is critical, education is critical. So I would like to see our development challenges as more as challenges that require long-term thinking. And I don't think it's something the ministers can solve overnight if the fundamentals, the basics are not yet addressed.
Okay, what are the factors to consider in this recovery journey?
I think there are a couple of things to think about. One is, how do you ensure that people's livelihoods are not negatively impacted in any significant way? So in Europe, for example, they have a safety net. So people were able to go out of work, and government took care of that. But in Africa, who will bear the cost of people not working? I think that was a debate at some point. You can't keep people at home for a long time. So what I would think is that in the interim, it's a very tricky one, because we were not prepared. And I can't think any country was prepared before the COVID. But the least developed economies are even hit hard because of this. So I would think that we need to think about how to ensure that people continue to do their normal work. If they're not working, how do we take care of them? I think that for me would be a critical thing to do at this point in time. Otherwise, we can also rely on the fact that, like I said before, enlightenment, education, so people take more care in the absence of any other support, but we still need to forge ahead and survive.
Okay, how can the large population of young persons be converted to economic gains?
Yeah, Africa has been said to have a lot of young people, and that's our strength, but it can also be our drawback. If you look at what happened in the last few months with NSAT, which show that we are sitting on a time bomb. So one way to tap into that energy is through entrepreneurship, is also through job creation. And what are the sectors that will give us the jobs? Some people have argued that we need to go into agriculture, but it's not any type of agriculture. It's not the man and his dog kind of agriculture. We need to think about productive agriculture that will then unleash the potential. So think about mechanized farming. We think about small and medium scale enterprises that will go into it and see agriculture as a business, as one that is fundamental to the economy. Another area where young people are obviously naturally attracted to is the issues around the digital economy. How can we leverage that enthusiasm and get our young people into that space? But for both, we need to think about responsible ways of engaging with both agriculture, because agriculture in itself can also have detrimental impact on the environment and biodiversity. And the digital economy can also create loopholes in the economy that can also undermine society. So the two present very good opportunities, but at the same time, we need to be careful that these opportunities are well guided to ensure that there is a good balance between the economy and the society.
Okay, there's also the debate about Africa being a primary exporter of raw materials with no value addition. Do you see the continent attaining the optimum industrialization it desires in the near term?
Industrialization doesn't happen in a vacuum. And I think and we can't talk ourselves out of where we are at the moment. We need to do things. And it takes me back to the point I was making about education. If you think about Germany or Japan or UK or China, they have very strong research and development culture. And that strong research and development is an outcome of their institutional arrangements, which education is very critical. So if you don't have the right education, you won't have the right technology. If you don't have the right technology, it becomes difficult to manufacture in Africa, to process in Africa, and even to generate new ideas. So Africa at the moment is seen as the export center of the world. We export commodities. But the next level for us is to think of how to process the commodities in Africa, create value in Africa, retain value in Africa before some of these things go out. But in order to do that, we need the knowledge, we need the science base. And even for us to attract multinationals, beyond those that are coming in to grab and run, we also need strong institutional arrangement that will support capacity building, that will support science and technology, that will help us extract more value from the commodities. Otherwise, we won't make any headway.
Okay, what are your views on the African Continental Free Trade Area?
I think it's a very interesting development. And I was listening to a top businessman from Nigeria a couple of days, and he was lamenting about some of the challenges even in ECOWAS. So the regional blocks need to be properly integrated. So the African Continental Free Trade Agreement is a nice one, especially in principle or on paper. But it'd be nice to see how these things are implemented. I think that's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. But one thing that we need to avoid is a situation whereby other countries, especially non-African countries, take advantage to other countries in Africa that are willing to allow them in, and they come in there and undermine the capacity that needs to be developed in Africa. Because the essence of that is to encourage intra-Africa trade. And intra-Africa trade has a way of encouraging us to produce for the local market. But in order to produce for the local market, again, we need the capacity, the capabilities, the science and technology. So if foreign companies are coming in to take advantage without necessarily developing Africa and African people, then it becomes a challenge. And I think that's one of the areas, or one of the things that the agreement will need to be more careful about as they roll out the implementation.
Thank you very much, Professor Kenneth Amechi, Chair, Business and Sustainable Development, Director of the Sustainable Business Initiative at University of Edinburgh Business School. Okay, moving on, the Central Bank of Nigeria has so far disbursed 149.21 billion naira to 316 1,869 households to cushion the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. The funds, which were given out in the first phase of the 150 billion naira targeted credit facility, were disbursed through the National Microfinance Bank after the beneficiaries met set guidelines for the intervention fund. CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele revealed this at a media interaction in Lagos at the weekend. The CBN governor said the second phase of the 150 billion naira is to kick off at a yet-to-be-announced date, with each qualified household expected to access a maximum of 3 million naira at 5 to 9% interest rate, depending on the loan purpose. The Apex Bank said the loan disbursements were also based on the activity, cash flow, and industry size of the beneficiaries, while the loan facility will run for a maximum of 3 years and repayment will be made on an installment basis, adding that applicants should possess a valid means of identification such as national identity card, driver's license, voter's card, or international passport, as well as a valid bank verification number. The Nigerian Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, NIT, says it is behind the quick passage of the Petroleum Industry Bill and other reforms in the extractive industry that will impact the economy and lives of Nigerians. The Executive Secretary, Orji Ogbonaya, said NIT will conduct fresh studies on mining with particular attention to investment opportunities in the sector and ensure the impacts of reports.
Government to build roads, provide electricity, provide healthcare, access to education. That's the only time that Nigerians can feel the impact of the fact that they have oil and gas, natural resources in their country. If you travel to Dubai, travel to Qatar, travel to Kuwait, you see how resources from oil, gas, and mining translate to impact in the lives of citizens. That's where
Nigeria is a member of 54-member Global Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative. In 2013, won the best implementing country in the world and currently leading the world in implementation of contract transparency, beneficial ownership, commodity trades, and mainstreaming. Now, decisions by investors in the nation's equities market will be dictated by the outcome of the Monetary Policy Committee (MPC) meeting of the Central Bank of Nigeria (CBN), scheduled to hold today and tomorrow. Ahead of outcome, analysts are already projecting that the committee will vote to keep the monetary policy parameters unchanged. At its last meeting in January 2021, the committee retained the monetary policy rate at 11.5%, though it was expected that the decision to hold rates will have retained the uptrend in the stock market. This did not happen due to the uptick in yields in fixed income markets, spike in the inflation rate, and profit-taking activities in equities. Meanwhile, the stock market suffered its 7th consecutive week of losses, resulting in 139 billion naira loss to investors and 0.7% decline in the all-share index. Now, turning our attention to Nigeria's stock exchange, the all-share index has gained by 0.89%, a total of 277.2 million shares valued at 3 billion. Exchange hands in 4,299. Market capitalization stands at 20.2 trillion. Oil prices resumed their decline on Monday, falling around 1% as worries about a drop in demand for fuel products in the wake of yet more European lockdowns dominated trading. Brent crude was down 60 cents at $63.93 a barrel, by U.S. oil was off by 68 cents at $60.74 a barrel. Both contracts fell more than 6% last week. Now, gold prices fell on Monday as Turkey replacing its central bank governor with a high interest rate. Critic to led to investors flocking towards safety of dollar on fears that the move will threaten other financial markets. Well, for more on the markets in the week ended, Ineka Oko takes it from here.
A total turnover of 2.3 billion shares worth 19.2 billion naira in 20,173 deals were traded last week by investors on the floor of the exchange. The NTA All Share Index and market capitalization depreciated by 0.69% to close the week at 38,382.39 and 20.082 trillion naira. The financial services industry led the activity chart with 1.8 billion shares valued at 12.4 billion naira traded in 12,019 deals. The natural resources industry followed with 201.2 million shares worth 41.2 million naira in 27 deals, while the third place went to conglomerate goods industry with a turnover of 62 million shares worth 65.6 million naira in 612 deals. Trading in the top three equities comprising Unity Bank PLC, Guarantee Trust Bank PLC, and Multiverse Mining and Exploration PLC accounted for 1.4 billion shares worth 7.1 billion naira in 2,317 deals. 435,459 units of exchange-traded products valued at 2.3 billion naira were traded last week in 29 deals, while a total of 295,829 units of federal government bonds valued at 304.8 million naira were traded last week in 20 deals. 33 equities appreciated in price during the week, 25 depreciated in price, while 104 remained unchanged.
Now, Japan leads losses in mixed Asia-Pacific trading just as Turkish lira weakens sharply against the dollar. Neka has more.
Stocks in Asia-Pacific were mixed on Monday. In Japan, the Nikkei 225 slipped 2.07% to close at 29,174.15. Hong Kong Hang Seng Index dipped 0.36% at 28,885.34, while the Shanghai Composite was up 1.14%. European stocks were slightly lower on Monday, with London FTSE down 0.3%. CAC 40 of France fell 0.53%, while Germany DAX gained 0.04%. Stocks edged lower with U.S. markets on Monday as Wall Street looked to bounce back from a losing week. Optimism about the markets and the part of the U.S. economy has been growing as vaccines are rolling out across the country. Meanwhile, African markets traded mixed on Monday. South Africa's JSE Africa Top 40 and Namibia Overall Index dipped 1.21% and 2.36%, while Tunisia Tunidex, Ghana's GSE Composite, and Nairobi All Share all traded in positive territory. That's Global Market Update. I'm Neka Oko.
Oh, thank you, Neka. That wraps this edition of Business Express. Remember to keep in touch with us. Do send in your comments, observations, and suggestions. Also, be informed that all previous episodes are available on YouTube on the NTA channel. You can also communicate with us on Twitter, and the handle is NTA News Now, and the hashtag is BizX. Business Express returns tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. Be safe out there. I am Musa Abubakar.